Hey everyone, so today I want to talk about something really cool that was sent to me from Inside Gadgets. These are new, even though they are retro. What they are is this is a Game Boy cart that actually turns any Game Boy into a wireless controller. The way it works is through infrared, and you put the cart right into your Game Boy, and when you order this receiver, it'll come paired already to that particular cart. This receiver here has a GameCube port, so this will actually work in a Wii and a GameCube. And I'm going to get a lot of questions to see if this will work on a Wii U or on a Nintendo Switch. As of right now, it does not. For whatever reason, when you put this into the GameCube adapter to run on a Wii U or a Nintendo Switch, it does not recognize the cartridge. I don't know what's going on. I spoke with Inside Gadgets. He's going to try and get something worked out, so these might eventually work on a Nintendo Switch. That would be really cool. As for the cartridge, this one is a Game Boy cartridge. He also makes a Game Boy Advance, and these are the TX carts. So this is the GB TX cart. He makes another one that's a GBA TX cart. And like I said, this cart will work on any Game Boy. It'll also work on a Game Boy Pocket, a Game Boy Color, a Game Boy Advance, a Nintendo DS, and a Nintendo DS Lite. The GBA TX cart will only work on the Game Boy Advance and forward, so on the Nintendo DS and the Nintendo DS Lite. It will not work on the Pocket, the Color, or the original. So I tested this out. I tested this out on the Wii using emulation, and it works really cool. So if you have any Game Boy ROMs on your Wii, you can go ahead and use a Game Boy as your controller. So it feels really good instead of using either the Wii Remote or one of the classic controllers for the SNES or the NES. This just feels right. He also has a receiver coming out that will work on the Wii, and since it'll work on the Wii, it'll also work on the NES Classic and the SNES Classic, so it'll have that classic controller port. Some of the other receivers he has right now available is a USB, so you can use it on a RetroPie or on your computer. He also has one for the SNES, so if you have a Super Game Boy and you want to use your Game Boy as a controller, but play your Game Boys on the TV using the Super Nintendo and the Super Game Boy, you can do that with the SNES receiver. Again, when you order your cart and receiver at the same time, they'll already come paired together. So what I've noticed, there isn't any lag that I've noticed when you actually go ahead and play. There is, since this is infrared, it's not Bluetooth. You do have to have line of sight with the console and make sure there's anything blocking. I've used my hand to block and play, and it still works fine from where I'm at and from the couch. But yeah, I really enjoy playing this Game Boy games with the Game Boy as a controller. If it worked on the Wii U or the Nintendo Switch, that would be even better, just because there's a lot of games that do have that Game Boy style. Wargroove from Chucklefish comes to mind. I would love to play that using a Game Boy Advance as a controller, just because the game itself is a love letter to Advance Wars for the Game Boy Advance. So since this is a GameCube receiver, you can also use it on the GameCube if you have the Game Boy player. So any Game Boy Advance games, Game Boy Color, regular Game Boy games, you can play on your GameCube and use your Game Boy as a controller. You can also use your Game Boy Advance. Again, you can also use, if you have the link cable, you can plug that into your Game Boy, into your GameCube, and control your games that way. But this does it all wirelessly, which is really good, especially if you're like me and have small children who are constantly tripping over cables. Wireless is definitely the way to go. He is working on, Inside Gadgets is working on a Bluetooth version. It's on their wish list. That would be amazing to see. Right now I believe he's having trouble with just finding a small enough Bluetooth component that'll fit in these carts. But for now, this is just really cool. When you actually turn it on, you are brought to, that's all it shows right there. Is just Inside Gadgets Game Boy Controller version 1.2, and any button you push will just show up as a dot showing that you've pushed a button. On his website there are a few troubleshooting steps and just little inside knowledge. If you actually hold the B button during startup, it'll actually show you what button you're actually pushing now. So if I hit B, it's showing me I hit B. A is A. Instead of showing a dot, start is S, select is T, down is D, left is L, right is R, up is U. And like I said, since he does have a GBA TX cart, the Game Boy Advance one, it would support the left and R buttons. Using this cart on a Game Boy Advance, DS, DS Lite will not give you the option to use the LR buttons. So if you are going to play Game Boy Advance games via ROM or the Game Boy player on your GameCube, you would need those buttons. You would need the GBA TX cart. So let's go ahead and show you guys some gameplay. So I do have one gripe with this. I don't know if you can hear it, but it does let out from the cartridge a low humming sound, and I believe it has to do with the infrared that it uses instead of the Bluetooth. But besides that, I mean, there's no lag. And if your Game Boy is in good condition, like this one is, you should have no issues with like your button sticking or anything like that. But it definitely breathes new life into your old consoles. I'm definitely going to be using my Game Boy a lot more now with this setup. Being able to use it as a controller to play the games, it's perfect. Yeah, I could use the NES Classic controller using an adapter for this, since it's the same button setup, but being able to play the Game Boy games on a Game Boy on the TV, there's no beating it. So let's go ahead and try swapping out the cart to another Game Boy. So just like that, I swapped out the cartridge on the fly to another Game Boy. Oops. I'm gonna die. And the receiver did not miss a beat. It swapped out right on the fly. But I do like the feel of the original Game Boy. Because a lot, you know, it's got some heft to it. Okay, so let's go ahead and we'll try a different game. I really don't play this game on the emulator. I still have my original cartridges, which I use normally on this Game Boy. Other than the Game Boy Color, this gives you a lot more looks than the Game Boy Color does, just because a lot of people recognize this as the original Game Boy, which it is. This is the original one. It's not a repro or anything. It's from 1989. But this would be great if you have a Super Nintendo and a Super Game Boy set up. And you're playing your game, you can take your game out of here, put it in the Super Game Boy, then put the GBTX cart in here, power it up, and you can continue your game on the TV using the same Game Boy you were just playing the game on. But now you're just using it as a wireless controller. Oh. And then right now, the way this is working is, like I said, I'm using the Wii, and the Wii is actually way down there. So there's a lot of stuff that you would think would interfere with the infrared, but it's working great. Even from way up here, there's no interference right now. But yeah, so like I said, I'm gonna go ahead and leave the links at the bottom, and I mean in the description below. This is the GBTX cart and GameCube receiver. Like I said, it'll work on the GameCube and the Wii. If you have a GameCube adapter for your Wii U or your Nintendo Switch, unfortunately it doesn't work with those at the moment. Hopefully in the future we can get these running on the Nintendo Switch, which would be so awesome. I would love to be able to use the GBATX cart on a Game Boy Advance and play a game like War Groove on the Nintendo Switch using this as the controller. But for now, if you do have a setup like I do, I definitely recommend checking them out. Until next time, guys. Oh, I almost forgot. If you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments below. I'll try to get to them as soon as possible. And until next time, bye!